All right. Isaac, do you mind praying for us?
Not at all. Father, I do pray at this time that each one can quiet their hearts and mind before you. We want your will and agenda tonight, Father. We pray that you bless this conversation and that it is honoring to you, and that each person has that heart posture towards you. Amen.
Amen. Any initial thoughts about the reading?
I found myself coming to the word simplicity a lot in this.
Yep, that's been a recent theme.
Yeah, it's almost in every chapter, I think. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like that word a lot.
Seems like there's definitely, it's kind of repeating itself a little bit, but says it in a different way each time almost.
What do you mean?
Like I'm hearing, like just a similar theme of like not beating yourself up over like involuntarily wandering thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I think he says it at least a couple times throughout each different chapter. But I don't know, it just kind of hit me when I was reading because it was like, it's obviously a very important.
I think even more than just thoughts, which is part of it, it's like just the carnal nature itself. It's not just beat yourself up over your humanness, because we're all born of sin, basically. So I guess we'll kind of get to that while we're reading, though.
Yeah, I guess there's a truth in realizing that while it's good to discipline ourselves, like we've discussed many times, it's not good for us to be hard on ourselves in an excessive way or with the wrong heart and wrong motives.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's not good for someone to be hard on us at times too. Although again, hopefully that person's doing so with a heart of love for us, because otherwise, if it's through if it's through like a resentment or a perhaps through a kind of abuse of the relationship we have with that person, then obviously that's unhealthy. But when we have someone like, assuming we have a good father and mother, which each one of us do, when they're hard on us, obviously that's a good thing. And when God's hard on us, which God is at times hard on us, so to speak, that's actually a wonderful thing, because as it says, God disciplines those he loves, those he calls sons. And lots of noise going on all of a sudden. Anyways, let's go ahead and start our reading. We have 4 chapters, a little shorter than usual. So starting with chapter 13, on confidence in God. The best rule we can ever adopt is to receive equally and with the same submission everything that God sends us during the day, both within and without. Without, there are things disagreeable that must be met with courage, and things pleasant that must not be suffered to arrest our affections. We resist the temptations of the former by accepting them at once, and of the latter by refusing to admit them into our hearts. The same curse is necessary in regard to the interior life. Whatever is bitter serves to crucify us and works all its benefit in the soul, if we receive it simply, with a willingness that knows no bounds, and a readiness that seeks no alleviation. Pleasant gifts, which are intended to support our weakness by giving us a sensible consolation in our external acts, must be accepted with equal satisfaction, but in a different way. They must be received because God sends them, and not because they are agreeable to our feelings. They are to be used like any other medicine, without self-complacency, without attachment to them, and without appropriation. We must accept them, but not hold on to them, so that when God sees fit to withdraw them, we may neither be dejected nor discouraged. The source of presumption lies in attachment to these transitory and sensible gifts. We imagine we have no regard to anything but the gift of God, while we are really looking to self, appropriating his mercy and mistaking it for him. And thus we become discouraged whenever we find that we have been deceived in ourselves. The soul, however, that is sustained upon God, is not surprised at its own misery. It is delighted to find new proof that it can do nothing of itself, and that God must do everything. I am never in the least troubled at being poor, when I know that my Father has infinite treasures which he will give me. We shall soon become independent of trust in ourselves, if we suffer our hearts to feed upon absolute confidence in God. We must count less upon sensible delights and the measures of wisdom which devise for our own perfection, than upon simplicity, lowliness, renunciation of our own efforts, and perfect pliability to all the designs of grace. Everything else tends to emblazon our virtues, and thus inspire a secret reliance upon our own resources. Let us pray God that he would root out of our hearts everything of our own planting, and set out there, with his own hands, the tree of life, bearing all manner of fruits. I want to hear your thoughts, of course, but I will kind of add a new direction in which to share those thoughts, and even before that, really think them up in the first place, which is like, I really want us to take what Fenelon shares in these chapters and try to think of ways that we actually can apply it in our real lives. I'm not saying that we've avoided that completely. I think there have actually been plenty of really good instances in which we have done so. But the one thing about this book is that it is, even though it talks about detachment from self and attaining into a selfless life and learning to live life in that way, it still is, it's a very, very contemplative book. So it has a lot to do with the inner self. It doesn't talk very much about how this looks in your day-to-day life that much, outside of the context of, your own thoughts, your own struggles. It doesn't really talk much about like your interactions with other people and the relationships you're building with other people, which is a huge part not only of God's work, but also a huge part of our own spiritual development. So that is a fairly obvious point in which this book falls short. But it doesn't mean that we have to fall short at that point, even reading the book. We can think about how these concepts can apply even to those things. So try to keep that in mind when you formulate thoughts about the chapters as we go through them. But as for this chapter, did you guys have any other considerations, maybe even applications?
This is another thing that it really has to be applied to everyday life. It's kind of hard to think about though, because we like to imagine that every day we live, we can make our own decisions for who we are and what we're going to do with each second and just thing that we do in life. So we have our own idea of what we want to do, our idea of who we want to be and what life we want to live. And this adds to having confidence in God, because we need to learn to let go completely of our own life and let go of ourselves and learn to be led by the Spirit. It was actually something I was praying about today, is to learn how to not be led by my own like desires for life, but to really just be led by God. And we can only truly do that if we have trust or confidence. I think trust and confidence are kind of intertwined here. But yeah. So I guess to apply that to everyday life, I think it's helpful to even pray for that in life and for others people's lives, to just be near God, because we're the truest and realest way to trust in God is to know Him, because you wouldn't just trust somebody you don't know, right? I mean, you might trust somebody you don't know if someone you trust told you to trust them. I mean, that's kind of a situation, but anyways, like, knowing God is really important, and having confidence in Him, because you can't. That's what I think is interesting about Christianity today, even, is that, a lot of people don't truly know God or have a relationship with God. So maybe, that's a huge gap in a lot of Christianity, I think, even with trust in God. And that's why I think there's a misunderstanding of what it means to live a Christian life. Because so many Christians we see today get saved or whatever, and then just do whatever the heck they want in life and not have any relationship with God or trust or confidence in God, because it comes with relationship with God.
And I guess part of that with those kind of people's confidence in God is something that really only comes up in difficult times in life.
Exactly. Because then you have to trust God, because, God is just, like you're saying, just something to go to when you're having hard times, because that's what a lot of people say God's there for, is to help you in hard times. And a lot of times God puts you there. So, but yeah, that's what I have to say about this chapter.
Yeah, there were a few things that you mentioned that had to do with, like, your present application of what you derived from this chapter. So, like, even along the lines of something you were praying to God today. So I would encourage more of that too when you are thinking about what stood out to you in the chapter. Is when Emmanuel actually helped me with this difference between application and meditation. A lot of the thoughts he shares here actually would be considered a meditation. So his meditation on confidence in God, or in what manner we are to watch ourselves, which obviously has come through experience in his own life. But when we discuss things in terms of, like, its application, we're talking about what does this look like in, if I can put it in three categories. First being, how has it applied to me before? How has this this idea or this spiritual reality or concept showed itself as a pattern in my life in the past, or as Elijah shared just now, the second being, how is it actively working in my life? And what are my thoughts about that? And what things do I not understand necessarily, or what things have I come to understand since it's working in me now? And then the last being, this one being somewhat, I guess, more on the unknown side of things, so it could come across as a meditation, but how do I expect this to be applied? Like, we're sitting here at this table, but after we leave, in the span of the week of time even before we meet again, how do I expect this to even be applied in that time? So from this night forward, if it's something that I feel like I'm falling short in or could improve in, or maybe it's something that God is pressing me about, like he's touching my conscience about this particular topic. Don't be afraid to share those things. I think that can actually be some of the most fruitful discussion to have, is when you have that sense of conviction in you that's inspired by the reading. And I think there actually have been a few cases that every one of you have mentioned in which that was the case. But again, let's try to lean more towards an application point of view when we're applying, or when we're thinking about what we've read. So, did you guys have anything to share about this chapter? This is not to discourage maybe thoughts you had beforehand. Definitely still share those. I'm just saying from...
Yeah. I would say so. Especially when it starts out with that first paragraph up there. It is to receive equally and with the same submission everything that God sends us during the day, both within and without. That has definitely been something I've been thinking about. And even like how to be able to discern what is from God in my day. Like, that's something that I'm growing in for sure, and still not 100%, but I think it's something that comes obviously with practice and with, like you're saying, the application, and also the desire and the willingness to want to grow as a son. But I was thinking with the within part, like a lot of the times, and especially even like in the recent days, I've been thinking about almost the days that that we don't meet actually, and how a lot of the times I will kind of get down on myself because I feel like I haven't really accomplished anything spiritual, if that makes sense. But so that's kind of just a thought that I've been pondering, kind of asking the Lord, like how, but also trying not to get trapped in wanting to be assured or wanting to be confirmed that I'm doing a good job, because that can also be something that we can fall into.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's kind of some stuff we talked about in earlier chapters.
But I think when I was referring to the within, a lot of the times I'll have certain thoughts that will come with me, or that will come to me in the day, that I think the Lord is helping me to be more aware of, but that are actually from Him. And that's something that, I mean, my mind wanders a lot, I think, during the day. And that can be a dangerous thing, as we've also talked about. But anyways, just developing that awareness to even receive those types of thoughts that might even, I don't know, I felt like I've been able to, like I've seen connections between certain thoughts and things that people share with me, or a teaching from Brother Emmanuel and maybe a thought that I had in a past day, or something I read, just kind of like those simple things. I guess just keeping those things before the Lord is not a bad place to be. I mean,
Yeah.
In contrast to just wandering, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be my thought.
Yeah, I can relate quite a bit to that. I feel like my struggle is learning to submit to God, or submit to what God sends us during the day. More on the within side of things rather than what happens without. I feel like I've gained some level of mastery, although I do think there's many places I can improve when it comes to my attitude towards things. But on outward circumstances, I feel like I can not only adapt to those circumstances well, but also respond with a good attitude. That's where every person my age should be. So it's not even necessarily anything exceptional. That's how someone should mature, especially when they become an adult, honestly speaking.
Yeah.
But there's a lot within, I think, when it comes to wandering thoughts. That's a struggle I have too, and because that's kind of where the attitude starts, is with the single seed of an idea or a thought that leads to other ideas and thoughts, which lead to actions, which lead to habits, and so on and so forth. But someone to that. I mean, I have plenty of social interaction, obviously, but I spend a lot of time by myself too. So to be on guard and diligent when alone is a very important thing. That's actually one of the key points mentioned in the Chinese culture reading that Emmanuel and I are going through, when it talks about how it is that a godly man really practices virtue. There's a few points mentioned. I think it's the third or fourth one is to be careful and on guard when alone. And really that only does come through a confidence in God, which itself comes through an intimacy with God. So that's another thing Finland talked a lot about, obviously, is training ourselves to revert back to God, not become super hard on ourselves or dejected when we have realized that we've wandered, but at least to step back and take ourselves captive, just as we're taking our thoughts captive, and refocus. And the more that we do that, the easier it will become, I think. About you, Isaac?
Yeah, I think this kind of hits on, I think, a topic that we've all been discussing even outside of the meeting, which is kind of just living life with God, even in your daily tasks and responsibilities and everything, really. And that's something that I've definitely been trying to work on. And I think it's very easy to get to a place where you're trying to cross a bridge before you get to it, almost. So where you have so many things that you think you need to work on. And so you're trying really hard to correct yourself, and you're thinking of all these things that you're doing wrong, but you miss what the Lord has for you. And so for me, it has really been that simplicity. Sometimes just quieting myself, which is really hard, because it almost feels at times you're being complacent. But I think as someone who thinks a little more, maybe than they should sometimes, it has calmed down to just not thinking at times, and trying my best not to think about the things that could worry or disturb. But yeah, I think it's really easy to give control to God when you know you have no control, like in tough situations, or when just in general in life when you're not doing the best. But it is a whole nother thing when you feel like you have control and your life is going well, and to still give that to God. And I can relate with what you were saying about, I think the Lord has definitely been, putting certain thoughts in my mind almost. They appear as thoughts, I think, a lot of the time. And it is yielding to those. And a lot of the time you ignore them, and I can't remember who said this, but never second guess the Spirit is something that really was like, yeah, that's good. Because as soon as you do, you start to discredit it, and then your likelihood of actually yielding to that thought goes away. But yeah, that's just kind of what I've been definitely working on. And actually, because we talk about growing in that intimacy with the Father, I've just been thinking of how to actually grow in that relationship. A lot of it is talking and praying, but yeah, and what Rachie shared really did stick out to me too, of like when she's talking about living life with the Father. It's not like two separate things where you have like a spiritual time and then you have your normal life. It should be all kind of one, where you're always in that position. Yeah, and so I've definitely been, a lot of the practical ins and outs of that I'm still working on, but for me it's just been quieting myself.
Yeah, it's a little off topic, sort of, but like the concept of being like satisfied or happy in life is really interesting to me. It's like, don't you, when you're like really happy about life, don't you feel like, I don't know, for me it's always, I feel like something's wrong almost when everything in life seems to be going well. And I don't think God wants us, this is a little off topic, I just had a thought. Like, I don't think God wants us to like live life being happy per se. Not he wants us to live life being sad, obviously, but I think like struggle is actually awesome, I think, in a way, because, or maybe soberness, because I think we're supposed to continually be in a state of a sort of soberness in life. Like, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but like, I don't think we're supposed to like live life in a way where we're just like super happy about everything. 'Cause that's, God didn't create humans to enjoy their life. God created humans, mankind, to fulfill a purpose for him. And I think that when we live life, we should live it not obviously sad. Like, God wants us to enjoy the things he's given us to enjoy in life. That's obvious. But like ups and downs in life, I don't think there is anyone who lives life on one side. Nobody lives life purely happy, and nobody, well, some people kind of, well, it depends on your mindset, really, but I don't even know what I'm saying.
Well, the last thing you said there is, I think, the key. Because the only thing I'd recommend you to consider is, what does it mean to enjoy something? What does it mean to be happy?
I would really think, where's your happiness coming from? I think that God obviously does want us to be happy, but to your point, I think a lot of the happiness is found in the world.
Yeah, and my point wasn't even happiness, I don't think. I think it's like
content.
Or just a view on life, basically. Like, of what we do. Like, some of the times where I actually am the most, like, I guess, encouraged or say happy, like truly happy in life, is like when I get up at 6:30 in the morning to go like drive and meet with Emmanuel, and it's just like my soul and body is so like terrible, it seems. Like, it's just bad because I don't want to be awake. It's early. But like fighting that through, like, fighting my soul and, like, overcoming it and, like, finding, like, a real joy, I guess, or satisfaction in knowing that what I'm doing, like, my soul, I don't think my soul for a while, like, accepts like being content about it, but I think those are, I don't know, it's just kind of a mindset. Anyways, I kind of went off topic there. It's just a thought.
No, I do think we find our greatest joy. We find the fullness of joy when our will and the Father's will are one. When our conscience is clean in that sense. When that's something that we are doing and that we recognize we're doing. There's nothing in this world that can really fulfill us in that way. And so even something as simple as disciplining your soul in those early morning hours to go and meet with someone that you know has been ordained by God in your life, the fact that you hold that time dear and that you're exerting yourself to go and participate in it is, I think, that the joy that you feel in that is actually a very small measure of a greater joy that you will come to experience in realizing that you are enjoying the same things that the Lord himself, that the Father himself finds joy in. And when we enjoy those things, then that's a joy that's beyond words. When we have that oneness of heart with the Father. It's been in our prayers before where we ask the Lord to enable us to find joy in what he finds joy in, to be saddened by what he's saddened by, to even be indignant and angry against that which he's angry against. Mm-hmm. It's again, when that's how we almost on an emotional level, the very level of our feelings, are living as sons. Our emotions and our feelings are not excluded from our maturity as sons.
Yeah.
Even emotions and feelings have a role to play. They definitely need to be disciplined because most of the time we start out with pretty undisciplined souls, pretty undisciplined emotions. But once more, we are destined to reach a place where our heart is not a misleading part of ourselves anymore, but something that has been completely given over to God, is devoted to God. A truly pure heart, a heart, as it was said of David, that was given fully to God, a full heart for God. His whole heart was for God. And that very fact with David is what made him so endearing to the Lord, because he had a full heart for God.
Yeah.
And David would write of that joy that he and the Father shared in that quite a bit. Go ahead, sorry.
I think a lot of the happiness that you're talking about, Elijah, I think is the way that we traditionally view happiness is definitely happiness in the flesh.
Yeah.
And I think of that as almost, adding cardboard to a fire a little bit, to where it gets really hot for a second and it looks like the fire's doing really good and it's nice, and then it dwindles away.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time we actually find that happiness empty and unfulfilling, and it feels good in the moment, but in reality it's not actually making us happy. And all that happiness does is, when it goes away, we seek it again. And it's kind of just this never-ending cycle of, basically doing anything we can to please our flesh because we don't want to be sad. But what we learn is that the more we try to seek for that happiness, the harder it becomes to achieve. And that's why that's why you're sad all that often and you're seeking that happiness. And that's why a lot of people are.
Right.
Because the more cardboard you add, the more cardboard it takes to get that fire flamed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I can share your same sentiment with like definitely not only in doing hard things, but there is a different kind of happiness that at face value isn't happy at all. It actually doesn't, a lot of it doesn't feel good. But it's almost, it's, I don't know how to necessarily describe it, but it at face value doesn't feel good, but it's like adding logs to the fire, you know? It sustains.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for sharing. It's all very good thoughts. Why don't we move on to the next chapter? 14. In what manner we are to watch ourselves. The following seem to me to be useful, practical directions as to the manner in which we ought to watch ourselves without being too much occupied with the duty. The wise and diligent traveler watches all his steps and keeps his eyes always directed to that part of the road which is immediately before him. But he does not incessantly look backwards to count his steps and examine his footmarks. He would lose time and hinder his progress by so doing. If I could expand on that imagery, I'd say he's not like looking at his feet necessarily when he says immediately before him. So the good traveler, especially if he's wanting to make real progress in his journey, he's actually looking pretty far down the road. We do the same thing when we're driving. We're told in driving class not to look right beyond the hood of the car. We need to be looking down the road. So in the example, looking right at your feet, or at least right before your feet, immediately before your feet, could be compared to a kind of obsession with wanting to make sure we're taking every step correctly. Mm-hmm. It's actually okay to stumble and trip sometimes, because that's what enables us to learn as men and women on journeys.
Yeah, I think Tim and Emmanuel shared that same kind of sentiment on a Tuesday not too long ago. To where it's you're making each decision in life now with the future in mind. And I don't know, I don't remember how far along in the future they were talking about, but it is like they were saying that it's a very wise point of view that not a lot of people hold, to like look at the future a lot and, you know, really think what I do now affects my future. You know, it's not some distant thing.
Yeah, it's just like concerning of who we're and what we're doing, you know, because a lot of that's raising up a generation. So I don't think it's like a certain amount of time in the future. Maybe it's just the idea of what we're supposed or what we're destined to do.
Yeah, so I guess in a practical way, I don't actually. It would be kind of interesting to see how you would actually think about that, like with a decision, like a simple decision. I think it's easy to overthink it, but
also in our journey, we're not really given telescopes or binoculars either to be able to see in detail what's ahead of us. Perhaps on occasion we're given prophetic glimpses, but even those should be interpreted, again, not by our own understanding, but by the understanding that the Lord provides. So with this same imagery, we can imagine that seeing maybe a building that we're approaching from afar off. We can't really see the details of that building. We just can see its general outline and structure. But we need to be content with the fact that we don't really know anything about the building. Say this has to do with an event or object out in our future. But we will get there eventually, because perhaps this resembles something that the Lord has shown us about our future. This is actually an idea I'm drawing from something my dad shared with me. But the point is to have patience with the journey and with yourself and with God about what you have been shown, what you can see, even though you can't see it in its fullness and its detail. The funny thing is, and again, the mind in real life plays tricks on us like this. We can think that we saw something that actually we didn't see. And so when we actually approach it, finally get close enough, we see that it's actually quite a bit different than what we originally anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
But that shouldn't throw us off. And that shouldn't upset us, because the reality of the thing never changed. It was always going to be that way. The Lord always had this appointed for us. So there is a sense of both anticipating things with a healthy outlook on life, but also detaching ourselves at the same time from those anticipations. Because that's really, I don't remember where I heard this from, but that's really what makes an unhappy person, is a person who has so many anticipations that are always being unfulfilled. Because they have so many expectations about life, but those expectations are never met. So it's not that we shouldn't have expectations, but it's who informs those expectations. How those expectations being formed.
And I think there's like a
Are we approaching
balance,
them? Yeah.
a balance too. That is what I was thinking of when he was talking about looking immediately before him was like the present moment, and that may be. And I think, like you're saying, there's a measure in which we need to look toward the future, right, and not just focus like on our steps, because that's obsessive in a way. But I think looking in the present moment, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but I hope that you...
It's okay, I'm following you so far.
Looking at the present moment in hope, and like in hoping, you know, or in trusting the Lord's timing, I guess you could say, and building up for the future.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's another thing I really like about that picture is, I mean, even going on a hike, that's what you enjoy most about the hike, is not where you've come so far, or where even you're intending to go, the destination you're trying to reach. It's the point in time you are.
The hike.
Yeah, it's the point of time that you're in.
Yeah.
It's the present moment that you enjoy most about hiking.
Mm.
It's the people you're with. It's the scenery around you.
And maybe even because you know that you're going toward a certain future.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean, say going on Storm King, if I don't know how many of you have been on Storm King. Like, the most fulfilling moment of Storm King for me is, this is likely not the case for other people, but it's not finally getting to the top. That is a fulfilling moment. That's not the most fulfilling moment. The most fulfilling moment is every moment for me, because being on that hike is such it's tough, which maybe makes another good example, because life isn't easy. Every part of that trail is special for its own reasons, because it's a beautiful hike, and there's unique sights along the way, and of course the most enjoyable part is the people that you're with while you're doing it, and the memories you make in doing it and everything. But yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what you were getting at, but the present moment and what the Lord has for us in that moment, outside of our awareness of what has been, what took place earlier in the road, or what's ahead, which can be even more daunting.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's saying, like, you know, to bring a sense of practicality to it, it's really, whenever you think of it, right, because your thoughts wander, but whenever you think of it, just ask the Lord, you know, what do you have for me in this moment, you know? It's not making any assumptions on what, you know, you think he has, or what you think he's going to have, but it's just right now, kind of quiet your mind and heart before him and just ask, You know,
Mhm.
that's something that you can do literally any time.
Hmm.
Yeah, similarly to what you were saying, I was talking to my mom the other day, just about you guys actually, just about wanting to, invest and want to grow in relationship with you guys in the way that the Lord has ordained.
Mhm.
And she was also encouraging me in that same kind of part into to look at you guys as ones that I will be with in the future as well, and
Lord
in the
willing.
future that we're wanting to build,
Yeah.
I guess, in that way. So not because obviously my thought in the moment was like the present moment and wanting to like grow up right now, but also knowing at least what the Lord has said, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Just
it's a beautiful and an exciting thing to consider. Yeah. All right. The soul which God truly leads by the hand. For I do not now speak of those who are learning to walk and who are yet looking for the road, ought to watch its path, but with a simple, tranquil vigilance confined to the present moment, and without restlessness from love of self. So yeah, I guess he does kind of talk about what we were just talking about. I've not been diligent like you guys by reading ahead. I have read this book before, so
What is
That's
this
what this
is this
is.
your third or second time?
to read the book,
Yeah.
probably my third or fourth.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you've pre-read. So.
Yeah, counts. Its attention should be continually directed to the will of God in order to fulfill it every instant, and should not be engaged in reflex acts upon itself in order to be assured of its state. When God prefers, it should be uncertain. I know we talked about this many times, but uncertainty is not a bad thing. God has us in places of uncertainty quite a bit, and we should not think it's outside of the will of God when we do feel uncertain about things.
It's uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
That's another
I think
part
it's
of
possible.
confidence in God.
Mm-hmm. I think confidence in God is equal to
Trusting God. I mean,
thriving in uncertainty, which is what I think faith is.
yeah, that's what I was about to say. It was.
it's almost being comfortable.
I think there is stability even to be found in uncertainty. It's a posture of the will and the heart.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like when you're certain of something, it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, when you're uncertain of you, at least you know it's not up to you
Yeah.
what happens.
It's almost being comfortable at the uncomfortable.
Okay, we're doing a lot of meditation here. Someone give me a real life example, an application of this.
Well, being comfortable and the uncomfortable would be saying, I don't know what you have for me, in this moment or in the future, and I don't know if I'm on, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I have trust in you, and you're not gonna sit through your brain trying to figure out everything that you're doing wrong in the moment and jumping ahead to conclusions, right?
But when does that happen for you? That's what I'm asking.
A lot. I mean, that's something I was even talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've had conversations with it a lot, but
Realize,
it's in everyday life.
Yeah. Real life situation for me, I know, as I went through times, and I still do, so it's to some extent, of worrying about things in the future,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to do, different relationships, and God has physically shown me things through the discernment of others like Emmanuel and Dad about those things, and he did it in a way that's not like I'm not certain of anything still, but God said, I got it, like I have this for you, just trust in me, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about it. So
Yeah, I actually have a similar testimony when he says here, attention should be continually directed to the will of God in order to fulfill it every instant and not be engaged in reflex acts upon itself in order to be assured of its state. There have been things that I've brought to the Lord wanting answers, wanting a sense of certainty. And there was one time where the Lord, actually a few times, where the Lord has said, I've already shown you that. I've already answered that question. So there's really not any need for you to keep asking.
But yeah, that's happened.
I don't know, I think of it, obviously this isn't practical, but it kind of shows you how silly it is sometimes. It's like the Lord leads you to like a path to walk down, and you're stopping like every 3 feet, continually asking him, am I on the right path? Am I on the right path?
Just imagine
am I still here?
Annoying of a tourist you would be.
Oh my goodness.
As say, because the Holy Spirit is our guide, but just imagine you're that kind of tourist.
It's like going in that car with Benji. Keep going straight. When do I turn? Am I still on the right way? Sometimes.
What, Benji's the direction.
Sometimes you just gotta wander.
Yeah, that's you asking Benji.
But not pointlessly.
Benji always knows where to go.
What's the thing that Tolkien says? Not all who wander are lost.
There you go. I don't know.
I thought it was Robert Frost.
Huh?
No,
That's probably where
Tolkien.
you got it from.
Tolkien came up with that? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't think he made that up. Anyways. That's...
Not all that's gold.
Okay, we're
Just not.
off topic here.
Not all that glitters is gold.
It says the other way around. But, okay. That's probably not even wrong. I don't know. Let's keep reading.
Oh, not all that is gold glitters. Yeah.
No.
All that is gold does not glitter.
That's been.
Not all those who wander are lost. That's what it is. Okay. Thus, the psalmist exclaims, mine eyes are ever toward the Lord, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. Psalm 25, verse 15. Again, that's pointing towards where our focus is, regardless of where we are. Observe how, in order to keep his feet in safety in a way sown with snares, instead of fixing his eyes upon the ground to scrutinize every step, he raises them to the Lord. We never watch so diligently over ourselves as when we walk in the presence of God, as he commanded Abraham. And in fact, what should be the end of all our vigilance? To follow step by step the will of God. He who conforms to that in all things watches over himself and sanctifies himself in everything. So the fact that we follow the will of God does not neglect the watching over of ourselves and the sanctifying of ourselves. That's not what the focus is. The focus is on God and his will. And when that's the focus, then those things will come naturally. That's where we get really stuck up, and that's what Fenneman's saying, is that when we're trying to examine every step is akin to prioritizing our sanctification or prioritizing keeping a watch over ourselves. And that's falling short, even though those are good things. It's trying to do them in the wrong way. Anyways. If then we never lost sight of the presence of God, we should never cease to watch, and always with a simple, lovely, quiet, and disinterested vigilance. While on the other hand, the watchfulness which is the result of a desire to be assured of our state is harsh, restless, and full of self. So there's the difference between these two perspectives. We must walk not by our own light, but by that of God. We cannot behold the holiness of God without feeling the horror at the smallest of our transgressions. In addition to the presence of God in a state of recollection, we may add the examination of conscience according to our need, but conducted in a way that grows more and more simple, easy, and destitute of restless self-contemplations. We examine ourselves not for our own satisfaction, but to conform to the advice we receive and to accomplish the will of God.
Yeah, I think that kind of is a good way to look at watching ourselves. It's kind of not even, I mean, it shouldn't be, even in the first place, something that is for ourselves, even though we are watching ourselves, but more as, I think it's almost a reverence toward God's ways and wanting to be, to live in that standard, you know, and not become, or be one who lowers it or is not in it, I guess. But that's, again, not for us, but because we want to be like him, and that's the way that he is.
Yeah, I think it's it kind of adds more to the looking upon yourself as a stranger kind of thing, where it's not, and so it's not so personal to you almost, to where all of your personal thoughts and ideas and desires get in the way. Well, you're almost objectively viewing yourself. That's kind of a weird way to think about it. Again, not by your own means, but to yield to that advice.
It's really interesting how when you reach a certain level of maturity, then you're learning how to do good things, things that you should do, the right things, but in the right way. So that's where the real change of heart comes, is, say, with self-examination. It is possible to do that in a self-centered way, even though it is a good thing. So that's what the Lord has to teach us, is how to do those things and practice them with moderation and temperance. And that's where the real maturity comes, is we don't idolize those things or put them or prioritize them above where they should be, but we look only to God, and everything but him, as the song says, grows strangely dim. And he's the one that leads us to examine ourselves when we need to, or to feel even to be unable to understand ourselves when we need to in another time. So it would seem from an outsider's point of view, that a son of God, someone who's led by God, is a very inconsistent person. In fact, I think, even in my experience, I've observed people who are obviously led by the Spirit of God, and I've considered them to be really unpredictable, inconsistent people. But it's because their focus is not on coming across as consistent to people. Sometimes the Lord does allow us to be consistent. Sometimes he doesn't. I don't think the Lord will ever bring us to a place where we come across as undependable to those who trust us, and not inconsistent in that way. But again, that's another reason why relationships are so important in God's for God's people, is because unless you really understand what the heart of the person is for, if that person's heart is for God, then you don't simply tolerate what seems to be like many mistakes and inconsistencies about a person that's led by God. But you know what their heart is. You know who's really leading them. You know why they're doing what they're doing. You know what spirit is directing their behavior. So you don't just tolerate them. You actually want to know more about why they're making things, making
Mhm.
decisions that don't make sense. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of got off topic there, but. So, last paragraph of this chapter. In short, we abandon ourselves into the hands of God and are just as happy in knowing ourselves there as we should be miserable if we were in our own. We desire to see nothing of what it pleases Him to conceal. As we love Him infinitely more than we do ourselves, we make an unconditional sacrifice of ourselves to His good pleasure, desiring only to love Him and to forget ourselves. He who thus generously loses his soul shall find it again with eternal life. Do you guys have anything more? All right, I'll keep reading here. I think I'll probably just read this next chapter, and we can save the chapter after that, and then maybe we'll read the next 3 after that.
So 4 total.
2, 3, yep. So you guys already read 16, and then we'll read the next.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah. All right, anyways. Chapter 15. On the inward teaching of the Spirit of God. It is certain from the Holy Scriptures, Romans 8 and John 14, that the Spirit of God dwells within us, acts there, prays without ceasing, groans, desires, asks for us what we know not how to ask for ourselves, urges us on, animates us, speaks to us when we are silent, suggests to us all truth, and so unites us to Him, that we become one spirit. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 17. This is the teaching of faith. And even those instructors who are farthest removed from the interior life cannot avoid acknowledging so much. Still, notwithstanding these theoretical principles, they always strive to maintain that in practice the external law, or at least a certain light of learning and reason, illuminates us within, and that then our understanding acts of itself from that instruction. We do not rely sufficiently upon the interior teacher, the Holy Spirit, who does everything in us. He is the soul of our soul. We could not form a thought or a desire without Him. Alas, what blindness is ours! We reckon ourselves alone in the interior sanctuary, when God is much more intimately present there than we are ourselves. What then, you will say? Are we all inspired? Yes, doubtless, but not as were the prophets and apostles. Without the actual inspiration of the Spirit of grace, we could neither do, nor will, nor believe any good thing. We are then always inspired, but we incessantly stifle the inspiration. God does not cease to speak, but the noise of the creatures without and of our passions within confines us and prevents our hearing. We must silence every creature, including self, that in the deep stillness of the soul we may perceive the ineffable voice of the bridegroom. We must lend an attentive ear, for His voice is soft and still, and is only heard of those who hear nothing else.
Yeah, that reminds me of what we were just talking about. You know, when our hearts and minds are solely focused on Him, that's when we truly see progress. Not really focused on what's being detached or, taken out of us, or what needs to be taken out of us even, but just, that pure focus towards Him.
To add to that, It says up at the top, it speaks to us when we are silent. I thought that very intentional. It added when we are silent. Part of that is definitely quieting ourselves in that moment.
You remember? Oh, were you still talking?
Okay.
You remember when Dad sat us all down, made us like imagine a clock and all the gears, focus on one gear, clear the mind. Makes me think of that. Kind of that same idea, quieting the mind. Also something I learned from Dad. I don't think it was that same time, but like just saying that God is always speaking to us. It literally says it here, but God is always speaking to us. It's just a matter of us listening to Him, which is really important. Because like people ask and ask and ask for God to speak to them. God's like, I am. Like, are you going to listen to me or not? Because people's minds are just so loud a lot of the time. So
The Lord's pretty straightforward about us asking Him to speak.
yeah,
Like He said, ask, seek, and knock, and the door will be open to you. That also includes not just an emptying of our and quieting of our minds, but also a real desire to receive from Him. Like it can even be a desperation at times. Of course, there's if we're not patient and we don't keep asking and seeking and knocking, then that really shows that we didn't want it as much as we thought we did in the first place. But it's the person that continually does so and truly desires it, the Lord will never fail to answer him. How rare it is to find a soul still enough to hear God speak. The slightest murmur of our vain desires or of a love fixed upon self confounds all the words of the Spirit of God. We hear well enough that He is speaking and that He is asking for something, but we cannot distinguish what is said and are often glad enough that we cannot. The least reserve, the slightest self-reflective act, the most imperceptible fear of hearing too clearly what God demands, interferes with the interior voice. There's an adverse and unhealthy kind of fear, like an anxiety that we can experience when desiring to hear from God. It's not a fear like the fear of the Lord of being in His presence, which of course is beyond our usual understanding of fear anyways. But it's a kind of fear that messes with the conscience a little bit, and that there might be something in you that the Lord's wanting to point out, and you're afraid to come before Him because you think, and you may be very correct about this, that the Lord's is going to point it out, and so you don't even want to be found in His presence, which is holy, because there's some unclean thing in you. But we should allow the Lord to convict us if conviction is needed. But it won't always. The Lord doesn't always work in conviction. Conviction definitely comes when it needs to. But that's the selfishness. That's the self-centeredness. We care more about our shortcomings than we do about being found in the presence of God. That should be pretty clearly the wrong way of thinking. The least reserve, the slightest self-reflective act, the most imperceptible fear of hearing too clearly what God demands interferes with the interior voice. Need we be astonished then if so many people, pious indeed, but full of amusements, vain desires, false wisdom, and confidence in their own virtues, cannot hear it and consider its existence as a dream of fanatics, alas, what would they with their proud reasonings? Of what efficacy would be the exterior word of pastors, or even of the Scriptures themselves, if we had not within the word of the Holy Spirit giving to the others all their vitality? The outward word, even of the gospel, without the fecundating, vivifying interior word, would be but an empty sound. It is the letter that alone killeth, 2 Corinthians 3, verse 6. And the Spirit alone can give us life. Many people that cannot get past that simple point. O eternal and omnipotent Word of the Father, it is Thou that speakest in the depth of our souls. The Word that proceeded from the mouth of the Savior during the days of his mortal life has only had energy to produce such wondrous fruits because it has been animated by that Spirit of life, which is the Word itself. Hence it is that St. Peter says, Lord, to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life. John 6, verse 68. It is not then the outward law of the gospel alone which God shows us internally by the light of reason and faith. It is his Spirit that speaks, touches, operates in, and animates us, so that it is the Spirit which does in us and with us whatever we do that is good, as it is our soul that gives life to our body and regulates all its movements. It is then true that we are continually inspired, and that we do not lead a gracious life except so far as we act under this interior inspiration. But, O God, how few Christians feel it. How few are they who do not annihilate it by their voluntary distractions or by their resistance. Let us recognize, then, the fact that God is incessantly speaking in us. He speaks in the impenitent also, but stunned by the noise of the world and their passions, they cannot hear him. The interior voice is to them a fable. He speaks in awakened sinners. They are sensible of remorse and conscience, which is the voice of God reproaching them inwardly for their sins. When they are deeply moved, they have no difficulty in understanding about this interior voice, for it is it that pierces them so sharply. It is in them that two-edged sword of which Paul speaks as piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit. Hebrews 4, verse 12. God causes himself to be perceived, enjoyed, followed. They hear that sweet voice that buries a reproach in the bottom of the heart and causes it to be torn in pieces. Such is true and pure contrition. God speaks, too, in wise and enlightened persons, whose life, outwardly correct, seems adorned with many virtues. But such are often too full of themselves and their lights to listen to God. Everything is turned into reasoning. They substitute the principles of natural wisdom and the plans of human prudence for what would come infinitely better through the channel of simplicity and docility to the Word of God. They seem good, sometimes better than others. They are so, perhaps, up to a certain point, but it is a mixed goodness. They are still in possession of themselves and desire always to be so, according to the measure of their reason. They love to be in the hands of their own counsel and to be strong and great in their own eyes. I thank thee, O my God, with Jesus Christ, that thou hast hid thine ineffable secrets from these great and wise ones, whilst thou takest pleasure in revealing them to feeble and humble souls. It is with babes alone that thou art wholly unreserved. The others thou treatest in their own way, They desire knowledge and great virtues, and thou givest them dazzling illuminations and convertest them into heroes. But this is not the better part. There is something more hidden for thy dearest children. They lie with John on thy breast. As for these great ones who are constantly afraid of stooping and becoming lowly, thou leavest them in all their greatness. They shall never share thy caresses and thy familiarity. For to deserve these, they must become as little children and play upon thy knees. I have often observed that a rude, ignorant sinner, just beginning to be touched by a lively sense of the love of God, is much more disposed to listen to this inward language of the Spirit of grace than those enlightened and learned persons who have grown old in their own wisdom.
That's interesting. New thought.
That's really the shortcoming of most Christians, is that presumption of being wise and learned in their theology or their doctrine of what constitutes an understanding of God and His purpose and the kingdom of God.
Makes it really hard to have like a different mindset about life, even.
Oh yeah, we talk
Especially-
about it so often.
Yeah.
Christians are some of the most stubborn, hard-headed people when it comes to certain things. There's no humility at all, especially from those who would attempt to come across as humble. That's just another.
Would you call that like the religious spirit at work in a person? That kind of stuff?
It's the religious spirit is what. The religious spirit is what inspires that and sustains it and propagates that kind of understanding in a person or in a people in the first place. It's kind of what chains them down into that understanding, into that way of perceiving things spiritually. Let's see.
You're after own wisdom. Okay.
Just not found it, sorry.
Yeah.
God, whose sole desire is to communicate Himself, cannot, so to speak, find where to set His foot in souls so full of themselves, who have grown fat upon their own wisdom and virtues. But, as says the Scripture, His secret is with the simple.
There it is again.
It's Proverbs 52. Oh, that's not right, because there is no 52. I guess that's Proverbs 3. It's capitalized out. 3:32. Anyways. But where are they? I do not find them. God sees them and loves to dwell in them. My Father and I, says Jesus Christ, will come unto Him and make our abode with Him. Ah, a soul delivered from self and abandoned to grace, counting itself as nothing, and walking without thought at the will of that pure love which is its perfect guide, has an experience which the wise can neither receive nor understand. I was once wise as any. Here's the author finally giving some application. Thinking I saw everything, I saw nothing. I crept along feeling my way by a succession of reasonings, but there was no ray to enlighten my darkness. I was content to reason. But when we have silenced everything within, that we may listen to God, we know all things without knowing anything, and we perceive that until then we were utterly ignorant of all that we thought we understood. We lose all that we once had and care not for it. We have then no more that belongs to self. All things are lost, and we with them. There is something within that joins with the spouse and the canticles in saying, let me see thy countenance. I guess that's me. Let me hear thy voice. For sweet is thy voice, and thy countenance is comely. Song of Solomon 2, verse 14. Ah, how sweet is that voice. It makes me all tremulous within. Speak, O beloved, and let none other dare to speak but thee. Be still, my soul. Speak, love.
I highlighted that section as because I felt like it was relatable to my life right now. Even just I wrote right here, just it's like a rewiring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the things that we thought we knew are replaced, and you know, yeah, there's just a lot of like situating on the Lord's part, I guess, and with us too.
Like, be more specific about what you mean. Like, what is being rewired in you?
Well, I would say pretty obviously the ways I think, and that could be simple, small things, habits or whatever, or a little bit more of like fundamental, like things that have just been implanted by whatever, and that I've learned in the world. But I felt, like I was saying, specifically recently, just that it's been kind of a season, and I think also Emmanuel has shared some emails along the same sentiment of like a rewiring season, just of the Lord implanting new ways and wanting to really have Him, I guess, as the authority of in which those things come about. And I think I might have shared with each one of you separately just how the Lord has kind of been showing me different ways of relating to people specifically, and that is something that wasn't really bad per se before, but just that the Lord is wanting to do something new, and wanting to establish something new, I guess, in my heart.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lord bless you.
That makes sense.
I'm always encouraged when you share those kind of things, certainly in a time like this, but I know you probably have your own private discussions with people like Isaac and Elijah, but I'm always willing and very happy to hear about it myself too, and I know you want to talk about it.
Sounds good.
Not that it has to be like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
No.
make it a thing or anything. It's
I
just
know what you're saying.
I'm always encouraged to hear that kind of stuff.
Mm.
All right. Let's finish this. Then it is that we know all things without knowing anything. Not that we have the presumption to suppose that we possess in ourselves all truth. No, on the contrary, we feel that we see nothing, can do nothing, and are nothing. We feel it and are delighted at it. But in this unreserved abandonment, we find everything we need from moment to moment in the infinity of God. There we find the daily bread of knowledge, as of everything else, without lying up. Then the unction from the above teaches us all truth, while it takes away our own wisdom, glory, interest, yea, our own will. It makes us content with our powerlessness, and with a position below every creature. We are ready to yield to the merest worms of the dust, and to confess our most secret miseries before the whole world, fearing unfaithfulness more than punishment and confusion of face. Here it is, I say, that the Spirit teaches us all truth. For all truth is imminently contained in this sacrifice of love, where the soul strips itself of everything to present it to God. Lord, I do pray you would lead us into all truth as our greatest teacher. Benji, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I would. Well, Lord, we do indeed ask for your guidance, Lord, and for, Lord, you to speak to us on this and on, Lord, the things that you have placed upon our hearts in the present moment. Father, I do pray for each one here, Lord, and beyond, that you would continue to establish, Father, your mind within us, that Christ-like mind, Father, that you seek for us to be made one with you and with your will, and wanting, Lord, what you want and despising what you despise, Father. I do pray, Lord, that that you would help us to be indeed in that sober mind, as Elijah was speaking, just in the, especially toward the things, Lord, that you have called us to be and, Lord, to do for you and for your Son. I just really don't want to miss, Father, your purpose and intention, Lord, in the season, and I pray also that would be a righteous concern, nothing from a prideful place, but rather, Lord, just wanting to be simple, Lord, and wanting to seek your relationship above all, to seek that intimacy with you, and to be more like you. So, Father, I do pray that you bless my brothers, and Lord, in the ups and downs, Lord, in each thing, you remain firm and good. And we praise you for your work. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.